She was wiping down the same stainless steel counter in the carrier's galley for the third time that morning when the static over the intercom carried a voice that didn't belong to any scheduled flight. A 29-year-old woman who had never flown an aircraft in her life was about to become the only person between a crippled jet and 800 miles of empty ocean with no runway in sight. And the carrier had been ordered to maintain total radio silence. Before we go further, drop a comment below. Have you ever been in a moment where you had to choose between what was safe and what was right? And if stories like this are what you're here for, subscribe. More coming. Because this wasn't a story about a pilot. This was a story about the person nobody ever looked at twice, until the moment everyone had to. Mia Torres moved through the USS Vanguard like a shadow that had learned to stay useful. At 5'3", with her dark hair always pulled into a tight bun, and her uniform one size too big, she blended into the steel walls of the mess decks. Officers smiled at her, the way you smile at someone who keeps your coffee hot and your plates clean. "You're so good at what you do," Lieutenant Hayes told her once, while she refilled his mug. "It's perfect for you." The words landed softly, the way kind people bury expectations. In the middle of the afternoon rush she would move between tables with that quiet efficiency, remembering who liked extra hot sauce and who needed their tray wiped before they even asked. She laughed at the right jokes. She never raised her voice. She made the ship feel a little more like home for men and women who were thousands of miles from theirs. But at 0300, when the passageways were empty except for the low red lights, Mia would slip into the small storage locker behind the galley that no one else used. She'd pull out the small wooden box she kept hidden behind spare cleaning supplies. Inside was her grandfather's old flight helmet patch, faded eagle wings stitched on cracked leather. She would run her thumb over the raised threads, the same way other people touch rosary beads. In those stolen minutes, she wasn't the galley steward. She was the girl who used to sit on her abuelo's knee in a dusty hangar in Corpus Christi, listening to him describe wind over the deck like it was poetry. She closed the box, tucked it away, and stepped back into the passageway. On the surface, everything was calm. Underneath, something in her chest had been restless for months, like a compass needle that couldn't quite settle. The knowledge lived in fragments. She remembered rain on a tin roof in Texas, and her abuelo's voice cutting through it. "The deck moves, mija. The ship breathes. You don't land on concrete. You marry the motion." She remembered him making her memorize approach speeds, wave-off calls, and the exact tone a landing signal officer should use when a pilot was coming in too hot. She remembered the way his hands shook from the cancer even as he drew diagrams on scrap paper with a stub of pencil. There had been 3 summers of secret lessons after her mother thought she was at band camp. Her abuelo never called them training. He called them remembering. "When will I ever need to know this?" She'd asked him once, laughing, while they sat in the old Cessna he wasn't supposed to be flying anymore. He had looked at her for a long time. "You'll know. And when you do, everything changes." One surprising fact he planted without ceremony, on older carriers like the Vanguard, the emergency backup comms channel, the one almost nobody used anymore, still worked through the same frequency her abuelo had helped design during his last tour in '98. A channel that bypassed normal blackout protocols. Mia stepped out of the storage locker just as the first wrong vibration traveled through the deck plates. A distant, metallic groan that shouldn't have been there. It was 1,417 hours in the middle of the South Pacific. The sky was that particular shade of blue that only exists when you're 800 miles from the nearest strip of land. Light bounced off the water in hard, bright shards. The USS Vanguard cut through gentle swells at 28 knots, the flight deck humming with the usual ballet of maintenance crews and aircraft handlers. Lieutenant Commander Reyes, the air boss, stood on the tower with his arms crossed, barking occasional corrections. Petty Officer Daniels, the young plane captain with the loud laugh, was teasing a new deckhand about his girlfriend back in San Diego. Captain Morales was in his chair on the bridge, drinking terrible coffee and trusting the machine of his ship to keep running the way it always had. Everything felt routine. Safe. Mia noticed the seagull first. Strange this far out. It wheeled once over the deck, and disappeared. She dismissed it. Then she noticed the faint hesitation in the normal rhythm of the arresting wires being tested. Small. Probably nothing. Nothing that looks fine is always fine. The static came again over the auxiliary channel. A pilot's voice, strained but professional. Vanguard. This is Ghost 17. Hydraulics failing. Partial control. Request immediate recovery. No one in the galley should have heard it. But Mia had left the backup speaker on while she worked. On the bridge they tried standard procedure. The carrier was still under MCON, emissions control. No radio replies allowed. The pilot was drifting farther out. Fuel critically low. The flight deck was clear, but the ship could not speak. Mia stood frozen by the intercom, the rag still in her hand. The pilot's voice cracked for the first time. I've got maybe 8 minutes. After that, I'm going in cold. Stay invisible or reveal herself. She could keep wiping counters. She could let the officers figure it out. She could remain the person everyone expected her to be. Or she could step into a role that would change how every single person on this ship looked at her for the rest of her life. Stay with me here, because what happens in the next few minutes is the part nobody talks about. And once you hear it, you won't forget it. Think about what you would have done in their position. Hold that thought. We'll come back to it. Mia Torres walked out of the galley, climbed the ladders 2 at a time, and stepped onto the bridge. Lieutenant Commander Reyes turned first. Torres, you're not cleared for the bridge. Gentle dismissal. We've got this, Mia. Go back downstairs. We appreciate the enthusiasm. Firm refusal. Captain Morales looked exhausted. This is not the time, petty officer. Then the pilot's voice came again, weaker. 4 minutes. Their alternative failed. The standard channel stayed dead. The backup channel was the only one reaching the jet, and they didn't know how to use its quirks. Mia reached past Reyes, keyed the mic on the old auxiliary panel, and spoke with a steadiness that surprised even her. Ghost 17, this is Vanguard Actual on backup. Confirm your current heading and fuel state. And tell me if your starboard stabilator is still responding at all. The entire bridge went silent. She named the exact frequency offset her abuelo had taught her. She asked a technical question about the jet's specific model that only someone who had studied the emergency procedures would know. Then she walked over to the plotting table and drew the approach correction by hand, numbers that matched the ship's current speed and the sea state perfectly. Captain Morales stared at her. The weight of the decision sat between them. A woman who served coffee was telling him how to save his pilot and his aircraft. He looked at the faded eagle wings patch she had pinned to her uniform without anyone noticing. Talk to him, the captain said quietly. Mia passed a photo on the bulkhead, a picture of a young pilot with his arm around a little girl. The same smile the pilot in the air still carried in his voice. That was what was truly at stake. Her hands shook as she keyed the mic again, but her voice stayed level. The instruments said the jet was coming in at the edge of survivable parameters. Her body felt every heartbeat in her throat. She heard her abuelo's voice in her memory. Clear as the Texas rain, you don't land on concrete. You marry the motion. Assessment. 1 pilot. 1 shot. 800 miles of ocean. No second chances. Resources, a moving deck, a tired crew, and whatever trust she could earn in the next 90 seconds. The plan is simple, she said aloud, more for herself than the bridge. We give him 1 steady voice. We give him the ship he can marry. Execution began. She called every correction with calm precision. Ghost 17, come left 2 degrees. Watch your rate of descent. The deck is rising to meet you. Each call had its reason. Each observation carried meaning. She heard Lieutenant Commander Reyes's voice change from skepticism to sharp focus. She heard the skeptic on the bridge go quiet. Then the crisis within the crisis. The jet's remaining hydraulic system started bleeding out faster than predicted. Not in any training scenario. The pilot's voice broke completely. I can't hold it. The solution came from something human. Mia remembered her abuelo telling her about the night he brought a plane home with half a wing missing. how he sang an old Spanish lullaby to himself to keep his hands steady. She started humming the same melody into the mic, just a few bars, out of place. Exactly why it belonged. The pilot's breathing changed. "I hear you," he whispered. The unexpected tenderness came when the pilot, a man she had never met, said, "My daughter's name is Sophia. If I don't make it, tell her her dad was thinking about her." Mia answered without hesitation, voice soft. "You're going to tell her yourself, Ghost 17. Eyes on the ball. We're right here. Final approach." Every second stretched. The deck lights blurred in the late afternoon glare. The ship rolled gently beneath them. The prophetic line returned exactly when needed. "You'll know," she whispered under her breath. "And when you do, everything changes." Maximum doubt hit when the jet was 50 feet above the deck and drifting slightly right. She saw the fear in every face around her. She felt it in her own legs. She gave the final call. The jet slammed onto the deck. The arresting wire caught. The aircraft shuddered to a stop 10 feet short of perfection. Something went slightly wrong, a small fire in the starboard engine that the crash crew handled quickly. But the pilot was alive. The plane was down. Silence fell across the bridge. No one spoke. The only sound was the ocean, and the slowing turbines, and the beating of hearts that had all, for a moment, moved as one. Mia's legs nearly gave out the moment the engine spooled down. Her hands shook so badly she had to press them against her thighs. An unexpected urge to both laugh and cry hit her at the same time. She swallowed hard and stayed upright. The first person to speak was Captain Morales. "Torres, you just saved that man's life." The words were businesslike, but his eyes were not. Lieutenant Commander Reyes met her gaze and gave the smallest nod. The skeptic's reckoning delivered without words. The rescued pilot, still strapped in his cockpit, raised a shaky hand toward the tower in salute when they pulled him out. Someone on the deck crew started clapping, then another, then the whole flight deck. Official response came in the form of quiet professionalism and raw gratitude. They moved the damaged jet below. They secured the deck, but several crew members came up to her in the passageway later and simply touched her shoulder without knowing what to say. That night she found her abuelo's flight helmet patch again. It no longer felt like a secret. It felt like a bridge. She met Captain Morales in his ready room. No ceremony. Just two people who understood what had happened. He slid a fresh cup of coffee across the table. They sat in silence for a long time. Mutual recognition passed between them without many words. For one moment before the world fully arrived with debriefs and paperwork and questions, Mia stood alone on the catwalk overlooking the dark ocean. The patch was warm in her pocket. Its meaning had changed completely. It was no longer just memory. It was proof that some things get passed down exactly when they're needed. Weeks later, back in port, ordinary life tried to return. But ordinary was different now. People who once only saw the galley steward now saw something else when they looked at her. It didn't fit quite right. She still wiped counters. She still smiled. But the restlessness in her chest had settled into something quieter and deeper. She flew back to Texas on leave and sat with her abuelo's old Cessna in the same dusty hangar. The rain on the tin roof sounded exactly the same. He wasn't there anymore, but she spoke to him anyway. Was I ready for that moment? She asked the empty hangar. Or did the moment make me ready? The question had no single right answer. It simply sat with her. If this story moved you, I have more where this came from. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And leave a comment below telling me which moment in this story stayed with you. I genuinely want to know. The final truth her abuelo left her with, the one that reframes everything, was this: courage isn't something you find when the crisis comes. It's something you carry quietly, in small wooden boxes and faded patches, and the way you wipe the same counter every single day, until the day the world needs exactly what you kept safe. She closed her eyes and listened to the rain. Somewhere out there, 800 miles from any runway, a pilot was going home to his daughter because one woman refused to stay invisible. And the ocean kept moving, like it always does, waiting for the next time someone has to marry the motion.